Splatoon 1 is a very exclusive game when it comes to what weapons are great. Many weapons are good, but this list of 12 that I've compiled here comprises just about every main weapon that you see in competitive play. Or, well, that you saw in competitive play. The competitive scene doesn't really exist anymore outside of Japan. You know, you have the big three, obviously, and then filling out this core five, we have Zimmy and Bento. And then from there, things start to get a little worse. You have E-Leader, which is too dependent on damage up, so it can't run QR. Dynamo has been nerfed. Luna Blaster is too short-ranged. Splattershot doesn't do enough damage, and it's also running a weaker kit. Carbon doesn't have a special. Octobrush is niche, and these two are very far stretches. You basically never see these either. So, effectively, there's only, like, 10 or so weapons that you see at any given time in Splatoon 1. And usually, it's just one of these 5, with the other 5 being relegated to niche options. However, today, I want to focus on one of those niche options. Splattershot, even in its absolute weakest relative to the other accessible Splattershots in the series, is by far one of the most popular weapons in Splatoon 1. And frankly, it's not hard to see why. Even if it doesn't have a one-shot, the 3-shot that it comes packing is decently fast. It's an 18-frame kill time. It does high damage, and Splat Bomb combos with it to make a 2-shot. On top of that, this is one of the vanishingly few weapons in the game's top play at this point that has ink efficiency, that has paint. You know, Splattershot can stay active for a lot longer than something like a ranged blaster. It can also use its its extra mobility to weave around opponents. And so, even though Splattershot has, similarly to Dynamo Roller in '96, been severely nerfed from its heyday in this game, it is still very popular. It's still very strong, and it very easily secures itself a spot among these top 10. However, I'm not here to make a case for Splattershot today. As easy as it is, and as needed as it is, because I feel like we tend to forget about some of these other options in the face of these 3. There is another option that I think fills the role of resident paint weapon with max uptime, or with mass amounts of uptime, arguably better than Splattershot. That weapon, of course, being the one I'm holding right now, the L-3 Nozzlenose D. On the surface, L-3 is nothing special. It has incredible paint, amazing paint, solid range, and a very good kit. It has good ink efficiency, decent mobility, less than Splattershots, but still quite high. But what really holds this weapon back, in Splatoon 1 at least, is its damage output. One shot from L3 in Splatoon 1, and in Splatoon 2 for what that's worth, does 29 damage. And that is a real problem. You know, you do find cases, especially against damage up, defense up, I mean, where not having higher damage than that is actually really bad. However, you don't need a ton of gear investment to mitigate it. Because something else that I think we forget about L3 Nozzlenose, especially in both Splatoon 1 and 2, is that it 3-shots, because it has damage. And it Splatoon 1, this is even better, because damage up affects your burst bombs, which, while it doesn't unlock any new combos for you outside of this funny one-shot, does unlock several opportunities, just as, like, lingering damage, preventing people from healing. If you're spamming burst bomb, you only need a direct and a 35. I guess the outer hit combos. The outer hit always combos. I don't know what I'm talking about. And suddenly, with damage up, you can kind of see that L-3 becomes a lot more threatening. The one thing holding this weapon back, really, is its damage and accessibility, which is a fair complaint, but for those who take the time to learn it, if they can, this weapon is very strong. It can even, to an extent, mitigate damage up. Sorry, I keep saying damage up. It can even, to an extent, mitigate defense up. You cannot force it to lose any combos by wearing any amount of defense. The outer hit will still 3-shot combo. The inner hit will still 3-shot combo. Directs are still a 2-shot. I guess that's a 1-shot with damage up. Okay, but what you can do is very little. And ultimately, you don't want to be running this much defense up just to counter the L-3. And, of course, you know, I also haven't yet mentioned this. A major issue with L-3 Nozzlenose is getting rushed down. So, you know, what's something that helps when getting rushed down? What is a tool that gives you something to fight back with when you're getting 2v1, or when you're caught by surprise by the enemy Dynamo Roller who put off a massive flank, or Luna Blaster, or whatever? The answer is, you know, just your friendly neighborhood resident frame rate ability special that also has a 1-shot. Now, the case I'm here to make today is that while Wasabi is still a very strong option, this is not your best shooter. Or at least not your best non-H3 shooter. I should clarify. And also, if we're going to be semantic, best non-H3 and range blaster shooter, because blasters are technically shooters in this game. So let's just look over these basic stats again real quick, right? Shot has about this much range. I have damage up on. I'm going to take the damage up off, since splatter shot will tend to opt to run something different. Personally, I run this weird getup just because I like having things to paint, and Ink Strike paints a lot, but you can probably just run this and it'll be fine, or even the comeback one, or like this one, or this one, or this one, or maybe even this one, you know? So many options for splatter shot. Anyway. So, splatter shot has pretty solid paint. You know, that's 1, 2, 3 lines, and there's very little gaps, right? This is painting a ton. Not as much as H3, but very little does. And it starts doing damage from around this range. This is a very easy 4-shot to hit. And here is our 3-shot range. And yes, this weapon has a natural 3-shot. fires one shot every 6 frames, giving it a consistent 18 frame time to kill, unless you are going against copious amounts of defense up. I keep saying damage up. In which case it is a 4 shot, which means that'll take 24 frames, which is reactable. So a max defense up weapon with Kraken or Bubbler can react. And where this weapon really excels in serious play is its paint, its uptime, and its speed. I hit my hand on the table while flicking. That really hurts. Also notable is that this weapon, while not like that notable, it is still something I feel like is important to point out. This weapon's fall off is decently easy to hit. Maybe not for me because I'm bad. There we go. This weapon has decent fall off. Now, L-3 Nozzlenose, on the other hand... I mean, for one thing, L-3 is a bit harder pressed as far as gear is concerned. To get the 3-shot, you do need a lot of damage up. I'm not positive how much you need. Oh, well, I just ruined my little stack of 12. Oh, well. I'm not sure how much damage up you need for the 3-shot, but a pure is the easiest number to keep track of. Which is, you know, a main and 3 subs of quick respawn, or comeback in 3 subs of quick respawn that you're missing out on. Or maybe even last ditch effort if you're feeling a bit quirky. However, L-3 is a main weapon, especially with the damage up, is much stronger than Splatter's shot. You have less DPS, but you paint from further range, and while it's not quite at its, like, Splattershot Pro range that it is in Splatoon 3, you're hitting decent damage from almost a full line further away than Splattershot. This weapon is a lot more accurate when jumping, which is, you know, a godsend for combat, since you will be jumping a lot more on this weapon than shot. Maybe not. And on the ground, it has perfect accuracy. Now, one caveat that L-3 is a little weaker in than shot is DPS. L3's DPS is solid, especially if you can get the timing down for the mashing, which is what keeps its fire rate competitive. But not only is it harder to deal this much DPS consistently than shot, which only needs to hold down the CR button, but it's also slower, even with this damage up. That said, it's not much slower than shots, so it's not the end of the world. Another notable, quote, problem with L-3 is that its fall-off is much weaker, just by virtue of having worse damage on fall-off, on its shots to begin with. So, it's very easy to avoid L3 fall-off damage. Now, as for the part of this debate that really matters, the kits. Wasabi, or no, excuse me, I shouldn't lead with that. Splattershot in Splatoon 1 has 2 viable kits for high-level series play. Wasabi is the preference at the moment because the other one is 220 heavy depletion, but it does have 2 kits, so we will look at both. L-3 only has 1 real kit that anyone cares to use. The vanilla L-3 kit has Disruptor and Killer Whale. However, if you're looking to use a different kit for L-3 Nozzlenose, your best bet is to just switch to Cherry H3 and to use that weapon instead. It's L3D or bust for that, for the life. So, what is up with Splattershot? You have Splat Bomb. At this point, the strongest it's ever been. And you have Ink Strike. Now, Splat Bomb, as I just said, is the strongest it's ever been in this series in Splatoon 1. This weapon has an insane, or this sub-weapon, excuse me, has an insane reach. It's 10% bigger than it is in the future games. And so it can hit opponents from there, and it hits a lethal from... Actually, I don't think the lethal radius is different. However, it is hitting 30 damage from much further away, which makes it very easy for a weapon such as, I don't know, Splattershot to pick up on very easy 2-shots. Splat Bomb is obviously fantastic area denial. This thing provides so much in the way of keeping people out of space. And that is only bolstered by the special. For all intents and purposes, Ink Strike isn't great. I'm gonna level with you right now and just say that Ink Strike is not the better special for shot. But it's 180p. This one is, I believe, medium depletion, question mark? I'm not sure. Which means that you actually, like, paint for your special on Wasabi. And while Ink Strike isn't amazing, it is fine. It's solid. As little damage as it does, it's very unlikely to kill anything. It does force you to get out of the way just because it can kill. Especially with any damage up that the Splattershot might be running. On top of that, it provides shot with extra paint, DPS if you're on Rainmaker, which is very important. And otherwise, you know, Strike is just Ink Strike. You basically can't use it in combat, but if you find a moment to breathe, then it's a decently powerful area denial. The other kit of Splattershot, which I'm actually going to change my fit for, is the Tint-Detect Splattershot or Octo-Shot replica. Now, Octo-Shot trades out the Splat Bomb for a Suction Bomb, which is arguably weaker than Splat Bomb in this game. I would say that Splat Bomb in this game is probably better than Suction Bomb. You know, these two subs really can go either way at any given time, but I think in Splatoon 1, Splat Bomb is bigger, which gives Suction Bomb less of an identity. And in Splatoon Splatoon 2, because Suction Bomb does 220 damage, it's the better sub there. However, for the sakes of this game, it is basically the same size, 30 damage-wise, as Splatter Shot, or as Splat Bomb, while just being slower. It provides you with better area denial, no doubt about that, but, well, maybe not even, because it's slower, so you have to pay attention to it less. It provides you situationally better area denial, and more solid paint, which is good. The paint is a good reason to use Suction Bomb, or to prefer Suction over Splat Bomb. Especially for a weapon whose identity is kind of painting while still being a good weapon, like Splatter Shot. And its special is Inkzuka. This fucking thing. And, like, yeah, of course Inkzuka's the better special for this weapon. This is insane, right? Massive range, just kind of destroys anything you're looking at. Can hit around cover because it's got that weird tornado hitbox that does the thingy. And you get 6 shots. Like, it cannot be understated how insane Inkzuka is. The problem is that you need to paint for the Inkzuka. And you can see, even with a main of special charge up, because this is a 220p special, I just cannot... It's taking me longer to paint for this than Inkstrike. Despite gear investment. Worse still when it comes to T-Tech is it's heavy depletion, which means you lose 75% of your special when you die. You do a lot of dying in this game. This is a short-range shooter. It has less range than every other notable weapon in the game, except for these 3. And, I guess, Wasabi. Whereas Wasabi is only medium. And, I mean, even then, medium is pretty bad as it is. And so, that brings us to L-3D. This is also medium depletion, but at least it's not heavy. And this weapon takes a bit of a different approach. It's a lot more offensive, combative, with its special, and sub. You lose out on the area denial with Burst Bomb, but what you gain in instant damage combos, burst damage versus paint, a cheap sub that you can spam if the situation calls for it. There's a reason that Burst Bomb has been considered one of, if not the best sub in the game since its launch. And its synergy with L-3 is pretty notable, honestly. Without damage up, it turns your 4-shot into a 3-shot at all ranges. And with damage up, you find some extra combos, like the aforementioned 2-shot on the 40 hit, or on the 35 hit, excuse me, or the 1-shot on the direct. And Burst Bomb is also a massive help in getting L-3's special off the ground. You know, Kraken. I do think, personally, that Bubbler is a little stronger than Kraken, but seeing as H3 already has Bubbler, and L3 with the Burst Bomb is already so offensively inclined, giving this one Kraken just makes so much sense. And you're already using gear for damage up, so you can't really afford to run that much special charge. But if you desire to run any special charge, you are getting that special really fast. As it stands, again, you know, L-3 has amazing paint. This is some of the best paint in the entire game. It can keep that up for a long time. It fires... Each shot only costs, like... Clearly not a lot of the ink tank. So you can be expected to get roughly as many Krakens per game as something like a CRB, which is much riskier because you only get that number of Krakens if you're killing every single person you see. None of this to mention, by the way, the fact that L-3 has very safe kill ranges on several prominent weapons. For instance, let's look at Zinc Mini Splatling real quick. This weapon has about the same range as L-3, and L-3 is a burst bomb. As scary as the Disruptor is, it's a manageable matchup for L-3, which is impressive. That's not something most weapons can say. I believe it outranges Dynamo. No, it doesn't. But it does outspeed Dynamo immensely. Like, you see this kill, and then you look at L-3, and it's like night and day. Obviously, it outranges Luna Blaster and Carbon Roller and Octobrush. 96 is where things start getting a little different. You get a decent kill range right about here. Well, I guess that's what... honestly, it might just be the same range. And then you start to run into problems the further up the tier list you go with these three. But CRB in particular, and honestly even Slosher to an extent, just because, you know, you basically have the same range. These are both manageable matchups. The only real problem is H3, which can be expected to one-shot there. You can run damage up on this one since it never dies. And even if you don't want to run damage up on this thing, or as much damage up on this thing, it's a one-shot from ever so slightly further away than L3 is a four-shot. And it can get closer because it has wall, and even if you get the angle, it'll just pop its bubble. And I'm gonna be so for real, H3 is just such an unwinnable matchup for, like, every weapon in the game. It's the one thing outside of Rainmaker. Oh, I guess it and Bento are the only things outside of the Rainmaker that where object damage becomes a concern, because these two have wall. And, like, yeah, L3 doesn't really have a good way to deal with Bento either. And that's the one case where I think Splattershot has the edge, is DPS. As much as L3 can pretend that it shreds things well, it is nothing compared to Shot with even a little bit of investment. Despite running almost half as much damage up, this is the same DPS. No, it's not. It's actually a second faster. And so, if for whatever ungodly reason you're sending your short range, or I guess in L3's case, kind of short mid-range shooter out to combat the Cherry H3 Nozzlenose, which is very much not going to die to it, Wasabi has a very slightly better case, especially with Splat Bomb. But ultimately, I think every other scenario where shot is strong, L3 is stronger. The additional range already puts you on par with most of the good weapons in the game, barring chargers, of course. And more importantly than that, the mobility provided to you by being a shooter, if I get good paint trails, is really, really important against something that notoriously, very famously struggles to fight people closing the distance. This is your counterplay against Range Blaster, is to close the distance. Range struggles with that. Slosher you have to be careful of because of the obvious. But even Bucket, to an extent, you can close on it, and it will have a much harder time fighting you at point-blank range. Burst Bomb helps a ton in this, by the way. Not only does Burst Bomb patch up these inconsistencies in your ink tank, but obviously just shortening the kill time against weapons that have a otherwise much faster time to kill against you, which is not an L3 unique problem, let it be known, is very important. And even against H3, if you can catch an H3 Nozzlenose with their pants down, and they, like they're just, their wall is in the middle of the open, and they don't have a bubble charge, you can get around it, and at that point, you're the stronger weapon in the matchup. And of course, you know, again, this all comes with the subtext that if you ever feel like someone is getting a little too close, if you ever feel like that range blaster is getting, or I guess in the other situation, if the range blaster is getting just a little bit too far, or that Slosher is being really annoying, shooting over the wall, or if you've been disrupted and you really need a way out, Splatoon 1 Kraken is here to save the day. To me, L-3 Nozzlenose is effectively a roll-compressed version of... To me, L-3 Nozzlenose is effectively a roll-compressed version of all three of these weapons put together. You know, you have the main weapon and all of its strengths of H3. You have the range, the decent mobility, the paint especially. You have the burst bombs and the combos that come with them from Slosher. And the ability to, thanks to them, fight at pretty much any range. And you have the get-out-of-jail-free card of CRB, of Kraken. On its own, L-3 Nozzlenose is not better than any of these three options individually. Far from it, even, I would say. But putting each of those ingredients together maybe not the strongest pieces of each puzzle, but the pieces that make them work. L-3 is a very standout weapon. To an extent that, honestly, I would consider L3 among these Big Ten. I think that L3 Nozzlenose is probably better than Wasabi. As important as it is for something that has a Splat Bomb and an Ink Strike in the game, this is Splat Bomb, this is Splat Bomb, and this is Ink Strike. And as far as other area denial, you know what else denies area? Kraken, Bubbler, Splash Wall, Bomb Rush, the entirety of Dynamo Roller. Wasabi offers a very well-rounded experience of Splatoon. It has just about every option it could ever want to be considered good, including 2 kits, which is not something a lot of weapons in the game have. But ultimately, this game just isn't built for being well-rounded. None of the other weapons here are well-rounded. Slosher is an extreme combative force with its burst bomb. You lose out on invincibility, but you have immediate punching power, constantly. CRB is the most offensive thing of all time. You are just so encouraged to just run forward and kill, kill, kill. Zinc Mini Splatling is the hunter. You cannot fight until after you have your bubbler ready, but as soon as you throw that disruptor and that thing is charged, whatever that disruptor hits is dead. The most well-rounded thing in the game is probably Cherry. And I don't know if it's that this thing is that well-rounded as much as it is just absurdly pointy in every good category. Cherry H3 is effectively Splattershot on crack, is what I mean to say. And I just don't think that either of Splattershot's kits really warrant using it over H3, unless you just don't know how to use the weapon, which is fair. Again, you know, the accessibility concern when it comes to L3 and H3 is real, and I do understand that. But I mean this completely with all of my heart. L3 Nozzlenose is not hard to learn. With the 3-shot, this weapon is mad easy. It's super generous. Burst Bomb gives this thing such a degree of generosity with its times to kill or with its damage numbers that, honestly, the hardest part of learning it is just getting started. So I don't know. If you're a serious player, or even if you're just a casual who really likes Splatoon 1, and just, like, devours Splatoon 1 content, in that case, I'm Ruby, hi, and next time you're looking for a well-rounded-ish experience, the next time you're looking for the next Splattershot, or you're thinking about how nice it would be to know how to use H3 Nozzlenose, but you can't do it, L3D is waiting for you. Go out and give it a try.